Welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name is, of course, Seesaw or Chris, and today we are talking about Guild Wars 2 in 2020. Now, we are taking a break from comparing MMOs today to focus in on one of my favorite MMOs, Guild Wars 2. And specifically, we're going to answer the question, will you have fun playing Guild Wars 2? It's a very vague question, I grant you that, but there are some specific points and takeaways you can get from the game to kind of determine if it's a game that you're going to be interested in if you haven't played it in a long time, or if you're a player who's never played it before. So today we're going to kind of outline what kind of player this game appeals to, and how you can have fun exploring the game for yourself. Some of you might remember a video I made a few months ago called Will Guild Wars 2 Survive? In this video, I highlight two primary points of why I was unhappy with Guild Wars 2 at its current state, and I really wanted to do a quick touch-in on that because I feel like my own views of the game have changed a fair bit, and there's some really good reasons for this. The first one is a viewpoint that I think a lot of people had back a few months ago, was a lot of just lack of communication. We didn't know what Guild Wars 2's plan was moving forward. We didn't know what was happening to developers at Arenanet. It seemed like a lot of people were leaving. We had this new living story called the Icebrood Saga that might be replacing expansions, might not be replacing expansions. There was a lot of change in the air, and more than anything, I think a lot of us just wanted kind of a roadmap to the future. Well, 3 months have gone past and a lot has changed. Arenanet has started communicating a lot. We've seen a lot of developers come, some new faces, as well as some returning old developers, which is really exciting to see. And more than anything, we know that there are future expansions planned, or at least a third expansion that is planned. Granted, we still don't know when that expansion will be, but we do know that they plan to do the expansion and living world cycle still, just not how long it'll be before the next expansion. So we do have some more clarity. It's not perfect, but it feels a whole of a lot better, and more than anything, they are talking to us again, which is just great. The other point I had in this video was my own unhappiness with the game, and that revolved around the implementation of new types of content that didn't align with how I used to play Guild Wars 2. And this is kind of the topic of this video that I want to talk about, and that's the alignment of your expectations as a player and what the game actually delivers well versus what it kind of delivers, but something, some types of content are not a main focus for Guild Wars 2. And it's really nice for players to know this before they invest too much in the game. So Guild Wars 2 typically offers, I'd say, 4 categories of content, and the categories I would list would be open world PvE content, instanced PvE content, SPVP or structured PvP, and then world v world PvP. So you have your 4 main types, and for those of you who don't know, I guess I should give a little bit of an example for each. For instanced PvE, we'd have things like raids or strike missions or fractals. For open world PvE, we'd have new maps, meta events, world bosses, that kind of thing. For structured PvP, you'd have kind of the 5v5 domination, or now you would have the 2v2 team deathmatch situation. And then for world v world, you would have the large scale invade the castle kind of PvP that you see in some other games. So those are the main types of content in Guild Wars 2, and each of them receive a varying amount of love throughout a calendar year. One of the easiest ways that we could answer our ultimate question of will you find Guild Wars 2 fun is, what type of content do you enjoy? And if that matches a type of content that Guild Wars 2 provides a lot of, there's a good chance you're going to enjoy yourself. So out of the list of 4 of them, there's only one real one that I'd say absolutely for sure has been focused on a lot in the last few years, with the other 3 getting more or less content depending on the year or the month. And the big one here is the open world PvE content. If you're someone who loves exploring new areas, if you're someone who loves collecting and looking at new armor skins and different wardrobe pieces and just like exploring for the hell of it, you're probably going to love Guild Wars 2. This is even going to be more interesting to you if you're someone who played Guild Wars 1 and you're interested in seeing what the world looks like a few years after, and by a few years I mean lots of years after, the events of Guild Wars 1 happened. So there's a really cool segment of the population that is going to be very happy with this. And I'd say in general, a lot of people who are interested in the other segments do enjoy this as well. I'd say it's the most universally enjoyed piece of content because it also brings story to the game, which most MMOs rely on a fair bit of story to progress the narrative and, give reasons for new things to be added. So it's definitely the high point for Guild Wars 2. And I'd say at this point, if you're someone who is looking for a game to do that and doesn't want to pay a ton of money, that's a huge win for you right away. If you're someone interested in the other 3 pieces of content, the answer to this question might be a little bit more challenging for you. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying if you're interested in anything other than exploring open world maps, you're gonna hate the game. You just might have to pace out, how invested you are in the game and come back at different times. And that is one of Guild Wars 2's biggest strengths, is that hey, if there's nothing left for you to do, or if you're not interested in doing the activity, because that's truly usually the case, it's very rare that someone actually has nothing to do in the game. It's more that they don't have any goals that they actually want to achieve themselves. Well, you can take a break and come back at a different date. That is one of Guild Wars 2's biggest strengths, is that there is no sub fee. The barrier to entry is extremely low, and if you're someone who wants to take a break and go check something else out, well, that's encouraged, that's welcomed, and you'll be welcomed back when you come back to the game. I mean, the only real things you have to be worried about is logging in every few months to make sure that you do get these free open worlds for free, which is awesome. It's such a great way to encourage people to come back and step out and just keep engaged with the game as they go. The most challenging part of this, and I think this is really the core problem that I'm trying to focus in on this video, is that it forces players to determine their goals. And you might be thinking, well, that happens in every MMO. There's a certain amount of player choice, and people can do one activity or not do an activity and focus on, something very specific. Yes, but Guild Wars 2 has always tried to be different. It's not tried to build on the success of other MMOs, it's tried to reinvent a lot of the way MMO play works. And I think one of the biggest reasons for this is that you do choose a lot of what you choose to progress in Guild Wars 2. Let's take an example of comparing Guild Wars 2 to, say, World of Warcraft. The start of the game is very similar. You are trying to level. That's a goal that's very obvious, and both games make it kind of the focus. The big thing that changes, and it's different in each game, but there is a variety of choice of how you get those levels. Guild Wars 2 is a bit more focused on exploration, World of Warcraft more on instance content and quests, but the general goal is similar. Now, once you get to max level, things are still kind of the same for a little bit. Guild Wars 2, you're trying to get higher level gear. You go to your exotics, you go to your ascendant gear. You can go to legendaries if you want to look fabulous. Whereas World of Warcraft, you're trying to increase your gear, and then there's always a higher item level that you're going for. The big thing that's different in World of Warcraft, at least different these days, is that there are a variety of different ways you can achieve that higher item level. Now, there are different achievements you can get, different collectibles and all that, but at the end of the game, in terms of raw power, in terms of doing new content in the game, that singular goal of a higher item level does sum up a lot of your progression. Guild Wars 2, once you've hit your legendary gear, or your ascended gear even, you're like, okay, now what? Well, it is up to you. Do you want to be very focused on doing raids and get all the achievements and all these cool thrones and skins and stuff like that? Do you want to be focused on doing jumping puzzles? Do you want to be focused on getting, some specific title in PvP or world PvP? There's a lot of openings for you, but you are the one who has to say, that's my goal, and that's how I want to achieve it. So I guess this sort of did become an MMO comparison slightly, but I think it drives home the point very well that it's more about how you want to determine your goals. Now, that opens a lot of room for people to play with friends and really explore the game how they want. And yes, you can obviously do that in every MMO you want. And I'm not saying World of Warcraft does anything else poorly, it's just more obvious how you progress, which I think some people are really gonna love and some people are gonna hate. And that gets me to my point. A lot of people who are joining Guild Wars 2 for the first time are people who are coming from another MMO. It's very rare that Guild Wars 2 is their first MMO experience, and if that is the case, that's kind of an awesome situation because you're not gonna have these weird urges that come from other MMOs forcing you to evaluate how you enjoy the game. And that's one of the big things that was hurting me for a long time when I tried to play Guild Wars 2 as my only MMO. I tried to play it as a game where I raided and got higher item level and progressed that way and increased my DPS and was just very focused on that same kind of instanced PvE content that you would be in a game like World of Warcraft. The difficulty was that I eventually completed the raids that were in the game, and I had the highest item level of gear that I could have, and I was kind of like, okay, now what? I could run this raid again and again to try and get this cool drop, but is that really what I want to do? And I feel like, to be fair, there was some negative on the game because there was a while between raids, and if there had continuously been raid after raid after raid, maybe I would have stayed more focused. But I think the larger problem is that I was expecting something from the game that it never promised to offer me. Yes, it's awesome that Guild Wars 2 has these type of content to scratch that itch, but it's not primarily focused on that type of content. So I took a step back, and as a player, as someone who just casually jumps in and tries out the new strike mission and completes it when it comes out, and then can take a break and come back when I want to for the next raid or something like that, I've had a lot more fun playing the game, and I don't feel bad about it because I'm not paying a sub fee, for the right to access that content. I can come and go as I please. So you're probably a bit angry now because you've got to the point of the video where I've kind of just said that the game is as fun as you make it. And unfortunately, that's kind of how it has to be for a lot of these MMOs. You have to get to a state of mind where you're going to enjoy what you're doing in the game. Because if you are too focused on something, it's going to start feeling like a job. If you're not focused on any specific goals, it's going to, really drive you crazy because you're not going to know what to do in game. There's certainly a balancing act, and one of the best ways that you can have fun in any MMO, I mean, obviously this works for Guild Wars 2 specifically, is joining a guild or a group of friends that set out those specific goals. If you're joining Guild Wars 2 and your group of friends is all about collecting different achievements or completing jumping puzzles, well, hey, you've got yourself a goal and you know what you're going to do when you log in, and you've got a way to compare yourself to other MMO players because you can say, hey, I've completed this and you haven't, or you've cried on this jumping puzzle for the last hour, well, I've been dancing at the top. It's little things like that that show the beauty of MMOs. But that's kind of where I want to cut it for this video because I don't want it to go on for too long. If you're new to the channel, welcome to Tiny Blue Games. We like talking about MMOs, and every Wednesday we typically do a general MMO video. A lot of them have been comparison videos, so if you're someone who is interested in multiple MMOs, I know, crazy, this might be the place for you, and we'd love to have you. But if you're just stopping by, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.